2006 law. It was the Fannie Lou Hamer bill, as well as the Rosa Parks and the Barbara Jordan bill in 2006. Ms. Sheila Jackson Lee for 5 minutes.
Chairman, thank you for this timely hearing, and thank you for reminding us of that moment in history. I was pleased to be able to add my predecessor and mentor, the Honorable Barbara Jordan's name to that bill in terms of its absolute unity between Republicans and Democrats. I was crushed last night about 10:30 as a Sinister act was performed on the floor of the United States Senate, and that is the defeat of a talking filibuster that would have led to the opportunity for the passage of the Voting Rights Act. In the words of Dr. King, paraphrased, justice was crushed, and certainly the righteousness of rolling orders did not exist. And so I believe that it is crucial for this hearing today, but also to take up the words of the president of the NAACP, as was indicated on the floor of the Senate. We're not finished. We will continue. And my recommendation is for the Senate to institute debate and to continue to place this on the floor of the United States Senate until it is passed. We're in a road that is going nowhere if we continue on the pathway that we are. Let me start by saying that it is my belief that race is a crucial factor in the efforts that we've seen, sadly, by our friends on the other side of the aisle. I did not call them racist, but I said racism is an extreme factor in the denial of voting rights. And I listened to the minority witness, we welcome her, to describe persons at the Justice Department for different views as left-wing persons only because they want to enhance the power of the vote. Let me also be very clear that Section 4 indicates in the Constitution that the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations. In listening to Senator Klobuchar, I want to make sure that it is not the founding fathers' desire that it be the tyranny of the minority. In fact, Thomas Jefferson said, "It's my principle that the will of the majority should always prevail. The vital principle of Republican government is the will of the majority." That did not occur as we proceeded. We've been stifled by the minority. So I want to focus on the question of race and voting, if I might. And I want to go to Cheryl Eiffel in a discourse on the floor of the House. Senator Collins, on the Senate last evening, tried to suggest that Section 2 was a substitute for Section 5. Certainly, Senator Ossoff did a beautiful job, but let us understand, and my time is short, how crucial it is of Section 5, and that it is a poor comparison, though we welcome Section 2, to suggest that that is the answer to voting rights violations.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Jackson Lee. Section 5 and Section 2 were meant to complement each other, but the preferred way of addressing voting discrimination was Section 5, which is to have a mechanism to catch voting discrimination before it's implemented and to avoid the long periods of time and the high cost of litigation that Tom Saenz referred to later. So the first resort was Section 5 and the pre-clearance process, which essentially Tom Saenz calls alternative dispute resolution. Let me use an example from Texas, your state. When Texas passed its voter ID law, we filed suit almost immediately. This was after the Shelby County decision removed pre-clearance. This was a voter ID law that Texas had been unable to get pre-cleared years earlier. The law went into effect. We litigated. We ultimately won. And then we went up to the appeals court, and then we came back down, and we also ultimately completed and settled the case for 2018.
Thank you.
2014 and 18, that discriminatory voter ID law was in place. It should never have been in place, and that's why we need Section 5. But when it slips through the cracks, then we need Section 2 to be able to litigate and challenge discriminatory voter.
Thank you. My time is short, and I want to ask Mr. Johnson, president of NAACP, and I know he knows that the Niagara movement started in West Virginia, where Senator Manchin is representing, and then to Wade Henderson. I want to get to this question of race, not to be able to throw racism around, but every time voters who happen to be of color seem to be making a legitimate legal headway, like Texas, for example, they've criminalized voting infractions. Please comment on that because we will not move forward if we cannot understand what the underpinnings of voter suppression is. Mr. President of the NAACP, Wade, appreciate your comments, and I'd also appreciate the comments of Mr. Sines if my president would allow them, my chairman allow them to answer. Mr. Chairman.
But
Mr. Johnson.
First of all, the vote is the currency in any democracy. And as we've heard here, many people are conflating race with partisanship. For African Americans, we want to fully engage and participate and not be criminalized, nor be put in a partisan bucket because we want to have fair and equal representation and the ability to elect candidates of our choice. And so the two examples that was used, both Texas and North Carolina, you're seeing tremendous growth in populations in Texas as a result of the Latino community and in North Carolina, both Latino and Black community, and the representation as a result of redistricting is lacking. And so for African Americans, for the Latino community, we want to be able to fully engage, to deposit our currency in this democracy for clear representation and not be criminalized for that, not be penalized for that, but stand up as full citizens in this country.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Mr. Sines, Mr. Henderson.
Congresswoman, thank you for the question. I defer, first of all, Derek Johnson is a vice chair of the Leadership Conference, and I associate myself with his remarks. And I'd now like to defer to my other vice chair, Tom Sines, to give him an opportunity to speak to that question as well.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Henderson. Mr. Sines, and welcome.
Thank you. As you know, your state, Texas, is one of a number of states on the cutting edge of change in this country, and that's demographic change that is unprecedented. And we have the chance to demonstrate what democracies do in response to demographic change. And what they appropriately do is work to incorporate everyone in the franchise and let them all vote when they have the right to do so. Instead, what we see is a reaction to demographic change, unfortunately in Texas, repeated in other parts of the country, that is to suppress the vote, particularly of those groups that are becoming of a size that is viewed as a threat to the powers that be. So this is really about the opportunity to demonstrate that racial demographic change can still preserve the democracy that we have in this country. And Texas, as you know, is right at the cutting edge of these issues.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. May I submit into the record these documents, please?
Without objection, so done.
May I just call their names out? Texas election officials are rejecting hundreds of vote by mail applications, and it's going on as we speak. Voting rights is a constitutional right, an article by myself in the Hill article dealing with the putting together of 2 African-American members in the redistricting plan put together in September 2021. Washington Post, New Texas Republican map carves Jackson Lee district out, and a statement of the mayor of the city of Houston about the voter registration shortage right now existing in the state of Texas, where people cannot be registered because we do not have any voting cards. Voting suppression glaring in Texas and other states. And as I indicate to Ms. Beckbath, I thank her for her presentation because she too has been a victim of trying to eliminate people of color from the process of empowerment and democracy. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. I thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson Lee. Do any of the members want a minute or so to either make a final statement or ask a final question or rebut anything or submit any new data?